morning, good afternoon, and good evening, park guests. It is I, Park Manager Brooding Gamer, here to go over with you guys the different Carnotaurus figures we've received over the years. Now, as you can see, I have 5 on screen now. There are quite a few more out there. However, they share pretty much the exact same sculpt as the Carnotaurus directly in the middle. So I'm not going to be showing all of them off because there's fairly all exactly the same. So we'll just be going over this main one here. This is the Epic Attack one from 2023, but we'll get to that one here in just a little bit. We are going to, of course, start from the very beginning and work our way to the very end. So join me as we go over the Carnotaurus figures from the Jurassic line throughout the years. We are, of course, going to be starting with the Demon Carnotaurus from the Kenner Jurassic Park line all the way back in 1994. The exact year I was born, so this is officially a 30-year-old toy. Now, this was probably one of the most sought-after collectibles in Jurassic Park history, in my personal opinion. A lot of people seem to really want to go for this particular figure. Now, like many of the Jurassic Park dinosaurs in Kenner, they always have battle damage, and they actually seem to quit this after the second film. We, of course, get pieces that would go to this, and there's also a lot of stuff that would go alongside this figure. Of course, you get the JP19 number there on the leg. Nice tattooed little image there. But like I said, you do usually get a big piece of, if you're able to find the skin or the chunk of meat that goes over the battle damage, you have yourself a very good intact collectible. But there are people out there that will actually reprint these for you, so that way you are able to get a somewhat complete figure. But you do have that piece that would go there. There is, of course, pieces that would go alongside this dinosaur, such as a mouth guard, I do believe, on this one, and, of course, a pair of ankle bracelets that were supposed to pretty much keep this guy from falling over. And that is the one problem I've noticed these figures have, is because they are made of a very soft material, they don't exactly make any, or this one does not make any noise, but that material causes the legs to warp over the years. This guy, of course, I believe had a feature where you would squeeze the neck just right there, and you, of course, would get the mouth to open and show all those somewhat pearly yellow chompers there. Very interesting design, very good choice. Of course, this is when we had a Carnotaurus with 3 big old fingers on its hands, but a very beautiful paint scheme. Even as a 30-year-old figure, this toy has seen quite a lot of playtime, you guys can tell. A lot of bent up spots, scrapes, and all that. But even then, 30 years old, it has stood the, it looks great. It looks like a very good figure. A lot of the figures that you have at this age, usually right around the stomach here, going into the waist, you can see a seam line, and a lot of those will start tearing. So when locating one of these online, it's very important to request a lot of photos showing off all the different angles of this figure, because you could get scammed pretty easily with a pretty damaged one. But that is, of course, probably my favorite dinosaur in this entire collection. But let's go ahead and move on to 1997's Bonebreaker Carnotaurus. Here we are with the Bonebreaker, and as you guys can see, it's another Carnotaurus pretty much. It doesn't have nearly the same design as the 1994 Carnotaurus, but it does have its signature tattoo there. This is actually Site B, and this is JP. I believe that says 26, and then it says Site B. You get these very vicious-looking claws. The figures are no longer made of a very soft rubber. At least some of them are not. This particular one is indeed not. It's like hard plastic. The way that this figure's feature was is if you bent the legs back, which I'm not going to do because I've only got one hand here, the mouth would open very wide. Now, this also came with capture gear as well, and it does have its battle damage on its stomach, showing off very inaccurate ribs in this particular location. But I don't see any animal surviving from something like this. But finding this figure is not nearly as hard, I would say, as finding the Demon Carnotaurus. But still, having this in the collection has been one of my favorite pieces. I always wanted to get the 2 original Carnos for my collection, as it is my favorite carnivore. Now, the design on this, like I say, it's very interesting. You have to have it at a very strange angle, or before he face plants. You have to have him at a very strange angle to get him to look proper. Mine, of course, has to stand just like this, but on the shelf up there, there's that little lonely Carnotaurus sitting up there. When looking at this guy, I've got him kind of sitting like this, but his tail sits propped up like that, and the Demon Carno, there he goes standing, the Demon Carno tail holds onto that, keeping him from falling backwards and also keeping the Demon Carno from falling over. Now, very interesting figure. Of course, like I did say, it did come with its own battle damage, which has removed off there. I have not seen one of these completed, to be 100% honest with you. I'm not sure if there is anything completed. I've yet to find one, like I said, and I don't see many pictures. This is probably one of the best designed Carnotaurs I've ever seen in terms of like how well it came awry. It did not come broken. There's very little any scuffs on this thing. Everything on it looks very well maintained. The logo on the side looks fantastic. The paint job I really enjoy. It's that weird kind of like a jungly look to it. It's definitely not the Demon Carno, but I actually saw someone repaint this exact figure to match the Demon Carnotaurus, and I felt like that was a very poor choice to do with this, because it's a very nice color scheme on this particular dinosaur, and this definitely kind of gives me more of like a Disney's Carnotaurus vibe, but still a very, very cool figure nonetheless. You get the osteoderms on the side, all the way down the tail, definitely picks up, and you got some on down the sides of the legs there. But a very beautiful figure. It's even sculpted. Its tongue kind of like is its own piece. It does not move at all, but its tongue is its own piece. The teeth are all individually painted. The roof of the mouth has its own look. Very well sculpted. Very, very unique figure. I love the green eyes on both sides. Very pretty. Very beautiful figure, and I'm very happy to have it part of my collection. But we're now going to go ahead and skip all the way to 2023 because, believe it or not, we didn't get any more Carnotaurs until Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom dropped. Now, that's obviously before 2023, but like I said, the only Carnotaurus I have is the 2023 Epic Attack version. And like I say, there's hardly any difference between any of them. They all have the exact same sculpt pretty much. And the only thing that changes really is the paint scheme. But let's go ahead and get to that Carnotaurus now. Now, when you look at this Carno, like I said, and I've said it probably several times at this point, they all have the same sculpt and the same design. There's very little that changes from Fallen Kingdom's line all the way till now. You work your way all up. You have the scanner code that is, of course, on the tail itself. You have a button right here on the hip that causes the roaring to happen. Oh, that was a longer roar. Let me fix him. He's kind of falling over here. Causing him to roar. If you move the tail side to side, you can get a head turn, and I believe it will even look down a little bit, but it does not want to actually make any noise from there. There is no button on the tail, which I'm surprised you think there would be, so that you can move the tail and cause it to roar. Now he's all bent over. So let's fix him a little bit. Let me fix him. I really need to get me a tripod. Anyway, color scheme wise, it's a kind of like a burnt umber with a lot of brown. You get these bright yellow eyes, which I think stand out very well to the figure. You, of course, get this very derpy top jaw set of teeth. The horns are indeed a solid brown color. I wouldn't even know if those could be considered painted. I would say they are, because you have that dark brown. For a while, I thought this may have been Toro, but I did find out recently that it was indeed the Epic Attack line, thanks to a few friends of mine who looked into it for me. This is one of the few figures I picked up from my good friend over at one of the flea markets. I label her as my dino dealer, but of course, this is when you still have the big giant feet that go with the Carnotaurus, so they do help it stand. You have this button right here on the back, like I said, that helps him roar. And then you have a button here on the side of the ribs that will... I'm surprised they didn't call this like the battle damage. Now, this has different sound effects to it. Each roar is different. And then below that, you're going to have another button right here that also lights up. And I believe there's one mode where they all light up at the same time. But I will say it's definitely a shame that we couldn't start getting a different design of Carnotaurus. They always keep putting this exact same pose, one foot in front of the other, and you get this like just weird statuesque style. I don't really know how else to put it. The paint scheme on this particular figure, I'm not disappointed with. I do like it. I wish that they would keep the color from the chest. They got the same color going all the way from the bottom jaw all the way down, and then of course once you get to the tail, where the bait or the beginning of the tail is, the paint scheme goes away and we just have a solid color. Actually, 3 different colors here. You have the brown, and then you have like a lighter brown, which is the rubber portion. This middle pick portion here is solid plastic. And then you have a code number right there, probably indicating which figure this is or which figure was made. I'm not sure what that number means. If any of you know, let me know. I do know that one of the Carnotaurs that I've actually been kind of looking out for, which is the Sound Surge Carnotaurus from Jurassic World Rebirth's line, does not have a very unique paint scheme. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's very similar to this, minus all the cool striping. And it actually has that number code right there on the side of the neck, which does not make much sense. In fact, I really feel like it ruins the figure. You do get a somewhat painted, I believe the tongue and the plastic, most of everything inside is just all one solid color because it's all one big piece. But yes, there you go. You get that particular Carnotaurus, which, like I say, if you've got this Carnotaurus, you pretty much have all the other Carnotaurs. I'm not trying to bash on the original ones, but I do feel like that they all use the exact same sculpt and not a lot changes. We now move on to a much more expensive figure, and that is the Hammond Collection Carnotaurus. These, I'm really surprised, don't make sound at this point. I'm going to be honest with you guys there. But you get very interesting glass eyes on this figure, a absolute metric boatload of articulation. So much so that, honestly, it stresses me out with just how much you can do with these figures. We're focusing on the background instead. Very, 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 very happy that I even own one of these. As you guys know, like I say, the Carnotaurus is my favorite dinosaur of all time, next to the Therizinosaurus, but this is one of those figures that I really wanted to add to my collection, because if I'm going to have my favorite dinosaur, I have to have it in the Hammond Collection figure. Now, again, I've noticed the same exact problem that we always run into, and that is indeed the fact that the bottom jaw, the coloring on the neck, goes down the body all the way to the base of the tail, and then, of course, you get back in there, and everything is just solid color again. Why they can't just have that color fade all the way down to the end of the tail, I'll never know. Or at least up to this point right here, I have like a big white scuff on mine for some reason. It came that way. But this is definitely a more reminiscent figure of the one we just looked at in terms of color. Very much, I'm trying to figure out what I'm wanting to say. Very happy with this particular figure. I love it, and it is probably one of my favorites that has ever been produced. It's a beautiful design. Definitely looks like the Fallen Kingdom Carnotaurus. And honestly, I'd love to see another one where they had like the broken horn, so we get the Dominion Carnotaurus as well. I have seen some custom ones made from that. Absolutely beautiful sculpt. They did kind of skip out on painting the nails, so that's a bit of a shame. But we do get this like I'm trying to focus. It's wanting to focus on everything else. But there we go. You have like this, I think it's like tombstone gray or grave gray color on the toenails there. So absolutely amazing figure. It's one of my favorites. Gets a little hard to stand up, but very happy that I have this guy in the collection nonetheless. And if you are a Carnotaurus fan and you do not have this, I highly recommend you hunt this down. It is, of course, going to cost you a pretty penny online because of scalpers, but you never know. You may find one at a decent price. I actually found this guy on Amazon thanks to my moderator, Pyro. He pointed me in the right direction and reminds me I still need to pick up the Giga. Still need to pick that up. But anyway, let's move on to our last Carnotaurus figure that we currently have in the franchise. We now move on to the Reimagined Demon Carnotaurus. Now, it is not labeled as the Demon Carnotaurus. It's just labeled as the Reimagined Carnotaurus. But I really wish they would have labeled him as the Reimagined Demon. Now, the one thing that is different from this figure is this one actually makes noise, unlike the first dinosaur rendition we ever had. I already did a video comparing the two Demon Carnotaurs on this channel, and if you guys want to check that out, you're more than welcome to. One of the differences with this Carnotaurus is the mouth is stuck open. It does not move or close. We have a little bit different of a head sculpt compared to the other Carnotaurs, a much smaller snout instead of that longer snout like we have with the other one. The horns are very good size compared to the head. I wish there was like a little bit of paint difference on there, but it is kind of just a solid rubber. I do have like a weird eyelash on mine, like a red eyelash above that, and it's only on that one side, so I just now noticed that. The arms are, of course, made of a very flimsy rubber. They did try to make this as faithful to the original as possible, so the tail does have very deep, or very, trying to figure out how I'm wanting to word this. It doesn't bend nearly as much, but it is made of what we call real feel, and just like we have with the Indominus Rex figure that they have currently, the Carnotaurus does have squishiness to it. It is not a solid piece of plastic. The legs are indeed made of solid plastic. We did get a new sculpt in the feet, thank goodness. These feet are actually much more accurate to how it should be, not those giant clown shoe feet. You get some good-looking scutes going down there, and osteoderms going off the side here. You don't get as many spikes on the Carno as you do in the older figures, but it's still a really cool figure, none to say the least. I'm very happy. Probably one of my favorite Carnotaurus that I ever have. Next to that, I try to keep it next to my Demon as much as possible. I am so sorry. I have a hard time talking tonight. It's been a long day. But very happy with this figure. I absolutely am madly in love with it, and I'm glad that this was the first thing they decided to do a reimagined figure on. I can't imagine a better figure. Now, of course, we have a slight difference in this one is you have that white chest. They did the white chest. It did not go up to the bottom jaw, but they go to there, and then it stops right at the chest, and then you work your way down to this solid black. Disregard this. This is actually very inappropriate looking, but this is where the rubber connects on both sides for the figure. I was very disturbed when I first saw that. There, of course, is another one of those codes. Looks like mine says 24640B. Seems to be, they seem to put a lot of the codes right there at the base of the tail. But yes, very happy with this. There is no articulation in the ankles to my knowledge. In fact, it looks like it's pretty glued in there. I stand corrected. It does actually turn, but of course, I recommend just keeping it in place. You get a very nice paint scheme on those toenails. They actually painted those instead of using like a dark gray. You looking on the back there, you get that red, and it actually kind of goes into more like a, I'd say, blood orange kind of color right there at the top of the thighs or the hips on both sides there. Anyway, they did not paint the fingernails on this creature because, you know, they're so microscopic. It's kind of hard to even really need to paint them, but I've seen a lot of people repaint this figure to be even more accurate to the Demon Carnotaurus from 1994, and I do think that's a very, I would leave this the way it is. I'm very happy with the way they did it. They even did the kind of like the lime green eyes on there, and it looks fantastic. Inside of the mouth is sculpted. The tongue has a sculpt of its own, but it's still made of that rubber, so it doesn't separate. Neither does the original, but still looks good. You get those big, giant yellow chompers that kind of stick way out that are obnoxiously large, so that fits well. The jaw does not really close. If you were to close it, you can, but it just bounces right back open. There is not a feature on here. You can actually, probably, if you squeeze that, his jaw opens a little wider, so if you want to make him look like he's roaring even wider, you can. Sorry for the crazy camera angles here. This is what happens when you use a phone. I really need to get myself a tripod. But anyway, that is the Demon Carnotaurus Reimagined figure. That is all of the Carnotaurus that I have, and as I say, if you want to include the sheer amount of other Carnotaurs that we've had that have the exact same pose, like I say, they do the same pose on pretty much all of the Carnos these days. Let me grab my other one here. This one is slightly taller, I'd say, but they all get the same exact pose. Just this leg happens to be forward instead of backwards like the other ones. But pretty much same exact pose. One leg in front of the other at all times. But like I say, it doesn't really matter to me. I love the Carnotaurus, and I will do get as many of the Carnotaurus as I can. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think. How many Carnotaurs do you have? Do you have every single Carnotaurus made? I unfortunately failed to be a amazing collector in terms of that, because I don't have every single Carnotaurus ever made. And I probably should end up picking those up because I do want to have more Carnos. But it's kind of like looking at the Baryonyx. There's about umpteen billion different Baryonyx paint jobs on the exact same figurine. But I'd like to look at a Fallen Kingdom Baryonyx, compare it to a more modern Baryonyx figure, so maybe the Rebirth figure, and do a comparison on how those look. But that'd be another good video to do, is compare all the Baryonyx figures. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have these down below, and if you do, or if you don't, which ones do you want? Thank you guys for watching. This is Birding Gamer, and I'm signing out.